right. So today we have an interesting one, I think, and
Aren't they all? Aren't they all?
some more than others, right?
I gotta tell you, my favorite ones are the reaction ones.
You like doing the
These
audio better?
No, I like the reaction videos we do. These conspiracy ones make me think too much.
Gives you a
And
headache, huh?
today it's like a little too early to think, but it's a welcome break from the mundane stuff I have to do today.
Oh, certainly. And this one might take a while. Hopefully, we can keep it down to 20 minutes, but I don't know.
Now let's just go. Let's get on with it. People are already clicked. What is it gonna be? They see
All
this
right.
weird background behind me, stacking yen. You see this stacking mad yen. So what's up, Chris?
So we're discussing China and their involvement in the fentanyl epidemic in the U.S.
Yeah,
Right?
fentanyl. So for those that don't know,
Fentanyl. Excuse me.
fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It is ravishing our cities and even smaller towns. I'm here in Yuma. I drive by a billboard every day when I come back home that said fentanyl kills and has a number to a rehab clinic. So I know there's a problem here also.
Have, have you ever seen the quantity it takes to be deadly of fentanyl?
Very little.
Yeah, it's like 3 grains of sand.
Very
It's
little.
deadly.
And there were three famous people this weekend that died from fentanyl, and not because they wanted to take fentanyl. The thing with fentanyl is it's very cheap. Here's the
Hmm.
thing, let's frame it this way before we get into China and geopolitics, because that's complicated. The simple thing to understand is this is very cheap. It's a synthetic opioid. It's about 80 times more powerful than morphine. And now the Mexican cartel has it. And because it's so cheap, they're lacing cocaine and crack with it because it's way cheaper than actual cocaine,
Right.
and people are still getting a high,
Or
right?
it
But
might be even killing them if it's
they're
laced with
killing
too
that.
much.
Well, the cartel doesn't want to kill their clientele, but
Certainly.
they want cheap product to sell at higher profit margins, right?
I didn't mean they're
And
intentionally killing people, but I'm sure it's happening.
of course,
You're
it's
laced
happening. It
with a
happened
deadly.
4 times this weekend to famous people.
Right.
One actor,
So
one
you did
actor died.
cocaine thinking it was just cocaine, but it was laced with
Exactly.
fentanyl.
And they're even lacing it like in weed and stuff from what I've seen. Like I don't
Wow.
understand now why in most states it's legal. You can just go to a dispensary and get clean weed from a reputable one. You're still getting it off the street dealers. You don't know what you're getting anymore. They're having
Yep.
and they actually outlawed the United States. Somebody fact check me on this, but I heard that the US actually outlawed fentanyl tests. So
Mm.
like you used to be able to go to Walgreens and buy a fentanyl test. So like you can put your substance, whatever it is that you're about to take, and like test it for fentanyl. They
Really?
outlawed those. Yeah, they outlawed those.
What's the rationale behind that? No, you don't
I
know,
mean,
but
it's the same rationale for like anything else the government decides to do. You know, it's
none, no
there's no
rationale.
rationale. There's no rationale. They
Right.
think that it's gonna encourage people to do more drugs.
So testing to see if fentanyl is in a product, if you have
Testing to
that
see.
testing,
Yeah.
it will encourage more use of it. I don't
Yeah.
know about that. That makes absolutely no sense. But hey, it's the government.
Yeah. Removing legal barrier. This is April 20. Removing legal barriers to drug checking can help reduce drug-related harm. Death and other negative impacts from drug overdose continue to be a major public health issues. Um, um, Good Samaritan laws. Laws designed to reduce this harm, including efforts to make the overdose reversal drug naloxone available without a patient-specific prescription, and overdose Good Samaritan law that provides some protections to persons who report overdoses to emergency medical personnel, have assisted in efforts to reduce death. But there is a fentanyl test. Okay, the country's illicit drug supply is increasingly tainted with illicit fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that is many times more potent than heroin and many more times deadly. One way to potentially avoid overdose is to make it possible for them to check their drugs for fentanyl before you use them. Testing strips that were originally used to detect drugs in urine are being used by many people to check drugs before injection for the presence of fentanyl. These
Oh,
fentanyl test strips have proved to be extremely easy to use and very effective. detecting the presence of fentanyl almost 100% of the time. So
So
these
I,
are,
I still don't understand how that makes it so where the user, say I buy some heroin, I want to make sure there's no fentanyl in my heroin. How does that make it so where I'm more likely to use the heroin? They
well,
think
that's
the
just
fear that I may have
speculation here.
fentanyl.
However, many states still have drug paraphernalia laws on the books that define paraphernalia to include items used to test drugs, which may include fentanyl test strips. So you're going to have to go at the individual state level and ask those questions.
Yeah,
But that's my
interesting.
speculation. I'm no politician. While these laws
Interesting.
are rarely enforced, they sometimes act as a barrier to large scale distribution of these strips and may prevent individuals from getting them or using them out of a fear of criminal penalties.
Hmm.
So yeah, this is a problem. 4 high-profile people died this week. I actually not too familiar with any of them, but one of them was from The Wire. He died, and then 3 comedians died, like in the last week from fentanyl overdose. None of them actually took fentanyl
Right.
knowingly. Knowingly.
That's scary. Well, all the more reason not to do street drugs, people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, these are like wealthier people too, so I don't think they're buying from
Sure.
like low-level drug
Well,
dealers.
no, I understand that. Well, but they're still buying it from a drug dealer, and that drug dealer is having to get it somewhere. If it's cocaine, it's probably not produced in the United States. It's
Exactly,
probably produced in
exactly,
Mexico,
exactly.
and the Mexican cartel have found a way to to minimize their expenses and
Yeah.
maximize profits.
So
So,
people tuning in right now are asking, okay, well, you pointed out the problem. What's the conspiracy? Well, the conspiracy is what exactly is China's involvement in this?
so
Because let's give them benefit that they do a lot of research in China and they came out with a synthetic opioid for pain that has legit medical uses too. Um, there was an article. This is actually interesting. There was an article in 2008. Okay, this is way before fentanyl became a household name.
mhm,
The state of Florida did a test where they tested physicians that abuse illicit substances. And they found that 75% of all physicians who abuse illicit substances are anesthesiologists.
hmm,
And almost half of those abused fentanyl.
really,
They proposed that just like tobacco smoke, you can catch a contact high from actually administering it to patients, like in the operating room.
that's that's plausible because of how small an amount it takes to get high. It's like one grain of sand gets you high.
Exactly right. Extremely addictive. So this was in 2008. They were doing think tanks were doing studies on this stuff.
Hmm.
And so that's just an example of how potentially addictive it is.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, it's
so
not just
yeah,
addictive; it's just high to begin with, right? And you have these doctors who that's their job, right? Anesthesiologists to administer
right.
pain relievers or whatnot and keep somebody under. Well, I could see them getting high off of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Continuously, and now they are addicted by no
And
intention.
and I know you have some stuff to share, but I just want to go through this real quick. So since 2013, China has been the principal source of the fentanyl flooding in the US illicit drug market, or of the
Hmm.
precursor agents from which fentanyl is produced, often in Mexico, fueling the deadliest drug epidemic in US history. If it wasn't for COVID, there would be a war on fentanyl right now.
Oh,
I mean, that's
absolutely. New
like,
war on drugs.
yeah, the media would be all over this. Um, Both the Obama and Trump administrations devoted significant diplomatic capital to persuading China to crack down on the supply fentanyl from China to the U.S., with China finally announcing in April 2019 that the production, sales, and export of all fentanyl class drugs are prohibited, except by authorized firms, which the Chinese government has granted special licenses. The issue is whether and how effectively China will enforce this new regulation. There are private companies able to do it. There are private companies able to send the raw ingredients to make
Hmm.
fentanyl to
Hmm.
places like Mexico, to
And
cartels.
that's essentially what they're doing completely.
That's exactly what they're doing. The cartels are business people. They're
Yep.
like I said, they're not in the business of killing their clientele.
Though
But
they do accidentally all the time.
if they're gonna find a cheaper product that's still gonna get people high and not thinking it's fake, they're gonna lace their drugs with that stuff.
Hmm.
And so this is what this we're setting the framework, okay, for what this conversation's about. Is China behind fentanyl coming to the U.S.? The answer to that is simple, in my opinion. It's yes. Where else can it be coming from? That's where it
Well,
started from. But
that
the real question is it are they doing it intentionally?
sure. And that article you were just reading, I believe, cites India, that the products are coming. A lot of it are coming from India, right? They're circumventing Chinese government
Hmm.
by running it through India, then to Mexico, right?
Yeah, but
They're getting the products.
India and China don't get along now, so I don't know if that's how that's working.
Still the case.
I doubt India is in cahoots with China on this.
Well,
Like conspiracy wise.
no, so I don't think India in and of itself needs to. It's just like the drug runners in Mexico, right? You have drug runners in India that are just there to make a dollar. They don't care who it's with. I
Right.
mean, and there was they cited in that article that there was 100 kilograms. I think it was kilograms or kilos. I don't remember. 100 something that were caught in India that was intended to go to Mexico,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Origins, I think, from China or something like that.
Yeah. This other article, the one you're talking about, it says Chinese vendors have tapped into online networks to brazenly market fentanyl analogs and the precursor chemicals to customers, ship them directly to customers in the U.S., Europe, and to Mexican cartel, according to an NPR investigation. Some of the substances are outlawed in China and internationally. Others are so new they are not yet banned, are harder to detect and regulate, and they can be used. So here's the thing: whether
Yeah, before you get into that, real quick,
yeah, yeah,
so that article is Dan's reading from, and the one I just discussed. Look down below in the notes, or I don't know what it's called, right? Where you
video
can post,
description.
yeah, where you can post the links. The link will be there if you would like to read it. So
Okay.
go ahead, Dan.
No, no, yeah. So here's the question: it's not is fentanyl dangerous? Is not does fentanyl primarily come from China? The question is it intentional or not?
Yep. So let's get into that a little bit. So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
history. Well,
let me give my first opinion on this,
all
okay?
right.
And I can change it during the course of this. My opinion is no. This started as a business, China, a lucrative business, and but here's where it gets gray area. I
Hmm.
don't think China started out with having this harm the U.S.
Right.
I think it's business, just like I think the COVID. We're not getting COVID, but COVID, which started in the Wuhan lab, was never designed to even get out. They're
Hmm.
doing research there for years on COVID.
Sure.
But once they maybe realized, hey, we can actually use this as a weapon to distract the U.S., to weaken them, it is in
Plausible.
line with causing social disruption in the United States,
Yep.
which is part of their agenda, well documented agenda as well. So that's where the conspiracy comes in. Is like, do they have any incentive to stop this?
Right. And I completely agree with that. The way that you phrased that, the way you parsed it.
I had to before we get banned from
Sure.
YouTube. We had to
Completely
say
agree. Completely agree. I don't think you can find evidence that the fentanyl problem is on purpose necessarily, but I think if you look at the other problems that are derived from China, I think it's a definite possibility, right? Even though President Xi, how do you pronounce his name, Xi Jinping, he signed,
long live Gene.
yeah, yeah, he forbid it. He signed into law that it will no longer be allowed to be, except for as you mentioned, allowed to be shipped to the U.S., right? But just because the government leader says so, right, for public appearances, doesn't mean it's still not happening, right?
Yeah,
With their authority.
especially in a place like China, I'm distrustful of governments everywhere, including United States, but
Yep.
especially in a country like the People's Republic of China or the Chinese Communist Party
Party.
(CCP)
Yep.
running the whole country. I mean, you kind of have to be distrustful of anything they say. There's a lot of interesting things that they're doing besides fentanyl that I think is interesting. It kind of plays into their 100-year plan.
Yep.
Um,
Completely agree.
You sent me their video propaganda for the military recruitment.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into like that was a bad that's first of all, yes, the way that video was framed made the US look like sissies, but in reality that's just one of many ads the US military ran. That's not the main one they ran. They just selectively curated for that video.
Agreed, but I think that is one of many such ads for the Army, specifically just that branch, right?
Right.
The Marines still run hardcore ads like you saw from China and Russia.
Right.
And things of that nature.
But they split test ads all the time. So that's one, who knows if they're even using that anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, that particular ad where they're talking about the lady who was, the soldier who was raised by two moms. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, when put in that framework compared to China and Russia's like a very, aggressive ads,
masculine,
you make the U.S. look dumb, right? But
or weak. I don't know, dumb, but definitely weak.
Weak, but one could argue that only in a place like the U.S. can you actually do that and still dominate the military. And you're showing that you're more inclusive. I don't want to get into that, but China, there's going to be people saying China, they're trying to get tough and focus on serious things while we're focusing on dumb things that don't matter.
But just to oppose what you just said, I mean, you look what happened in Afghanistan very recently. So today is September 9th, 2021. A month ago, we had not even a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, just a disaster in Afghanistan, right? Which makes us look very weak as well.
Yeah.
So, or maybe we are weak.
So actually, before you share your stuff, because I know your stuff's going to be all focused, mine is like about China, but it's not a topic that we're going to naturally come back to. So I wanted to share that clip first, right?
Okay.
I don't know how long this is going to take, but let's see. Because this is actually interesting. I wanted you, Chris, and the other viewers to see. So here's from one of my favorite podcasts, The All In. They talk about China video game ban. Have you heard of this?
No.
I want to hear your thoughts on this. This is a China's video game ban. It's like an 8-minute clip, 7-minute clip. Okay.
All right.
A kid's gonna get in jail if we're Chinese right now and they played video games. How many months are they gonna get?
Basically, I think you would do harder time. So moving on to our next story.
No, the consequences is to the Chinese internet companies.
No, what's the consequence to the kids if they're caught on video games?
No, you're not.
The companies have to turn it off. Right.
All right, here we go. China bans young people from playing video games. This is for kids who are under the age of 18. They are now restricted from playing games on weekdays, can only play for 3 hours most weekends. And these were set as a response to China's physical and mental health being affected by gaming.
Yeah.
So without knowing any additional details, if you're an authoritarian, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. Absolutely.
But because the guys get into reasons why. They all speculate. They all get a chance to give their opinion on this.
Sure.
And at first, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, great idea," but then they start thinking it through, and they start speculating why China's doing this, which leads. It's exactly what we're talking about just now. That's why I wanted to play this clip first.
All right.
To Reuters, it limits.
I think they're doing what all American parents would want our government to do for our kids.
I don't disagree with that. Gamers are now penalized if they don't obey, and the gaming companies will be as well. Gaming companies will have to prove they have an identification system in
social credit score, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Place like requiring minors to use their real names.
Do you know how fucking hard it is? I have 3 kids in that age range. I am sweating who they're texting, who they're talking to, what game they're playing, the new game they want to download. Fuck that. This is the only thing I've ever said that would make me want to move to China. This one rule
this is
the most incredible thing I've ever heard. And they're so smart. By the way, what's so beautiful is They send fentanyl and TikTok to us so that we get addicted to that shit.
Totally.
You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? And they're like,
Yeah.
no, you guys are going to learn STEM so that you can, take over the world. It's beautiful. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I would say like everything about
That's exactly what we're talking about right there. But let's continue because this is good, and then we'll get to back to the fentanyl.
China is a measured decision, right? The Politburo, the decision makers are not sitting there randomly shooting from the hip based on intuition and saying, hey, I think we should stop video games. They seem bad for kids. There is clearly evidence and data and statistical models that are driving this decision, and their objective function is improve the health, the longevity, and the economic prosperity of our society as a whole.
I'm sorry, did you get this statement from China? What are you doing?
Continue, comrade.
You guys
Comrade Friedberg,
continue. But I'm pointing out these guys generally don't make decisions based on someone's kind of like flippant intuition. They make decisions based on what they believe to be in the better interest. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but in the better interest of economic prosperity and longevity. They got a 100-year plan,
let's be honest.
And so there's
they want
data
to
that
win
certainly underlies this.
Yeah.
And I think we all know it intuitively. We can certainly read reports, but in the United States, we value individual liberties above all else. And so we don't find ourselves in the circumstance. It seems foreign and scary and crazy. But again, it's another, in my opinion, it's another tool that China will use to outcompete this century.
Yes, that's true. But let's be clear. We don't value individual liberties. That's not true. That's just what we tell people. But that's not totally true. And you know that.
I'm not going to go there, but yes.
Well, I mean, we are literally sitting here fighting. There's a group of individuals who are fighting to wear masks or not have to wear masks, rather, not have to take the vaccine. And at the same time, and I don't know if we want to...
David, though, that's what kids are getting when they're playing 4 hours of fucking Call of Duty every night.
4 hours?
Again, you're just validating the mental health aspect. They've studied the mental health implications of these video games, and they say enough's enough.
Point. I'm not arguing for the ban. I'm arguing for the fact that China has certainly done something to indicate. They have some data that indicates why they should make this decision. It may be, you're right, it may be about kind of, growing, getting people to be more romantic and get out of the house and go get married and have kids and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the part. That's the part I wanted to share because what he said, we don't need to watch the rest. What he said was one of the reasons behind China's ban of video games is in line with their 100-year plan. And then Chamath's joking about, well, they send us TikTok and fentanyl to get addicted. Right. Meanwhile, they have their kids study, limit their video games. They actually have a very big problem with population growth rate because of the one-child policy. This is what we didn't see, but I'll just summarize it. A lot too many males in China, young males, and not getting out and meeting girls rather than playing video games, right? Like 18 hours a day. So one of the moves could be, not only do we want the kids to be more productive, but we want them going out and meeting girls and stuff. So
procreating.
And they have data on all this. They probably see the data that, hey, the more you let kids play games, the less they're likely to have kids.
Reproduce. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share.
I saw something not too long ago, which really surprised me about the future prediction of Chinese population. It was approaching 2 billion not too long ago. And it was within a generation or two. I don't remember specifically, but it said the population will fall beneath 1 billion. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're looking at the same data. Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to get that out of the way. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Very interesting. I don't know. I didn't catch any problems they found with this, right? They seem to all be in agreement with it.
No, I fast forwarded the stuff. They didn't all agree with it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree with the sentiment, right? Just as they said, you want your kids studying, not wasting their time playing games, right? Mm-hmm. You want your future generations to be powerful, right? That's how you as a civilization become more powerful, when your people are more powerful.
That's how you build these missiles right here.
Yeah, and they're fully aware of that. So getting back to the fentanyl problem, quick tidbit of history, which I'm sure you're probably aware of, Dan, but China itself went through a real opiate crisis, right? Back in the 18 and 1900s. And it's funny because it kind of worked the same way that it is now for them to us, right? Mm-hmm. So back in the 18 and 1900s, China, as they are now, exported great amount of goods, right? and there was a huge trade deficit between the West and China, right, as there is now, at least with the United States. So Britain came up with a relatively ingenious plan before there were laws against drugs, right? They went to India, got a bunch of opiates because China seemed to really like their opiates, and then they brought it to China, right? And they would trade. First they would sell the opiates to whoever's dispersing these drugs. They would get gold and silver, and then they would buy the products of Britain that Britain wanted, and then eventually the United States as well got in on this action, and they would buy with that gold and silver that they sold the opiates for, and it was so powerful of a way of doing this trading that eventually Britain and the U.S. had a positive trade deficit with China. They were taking in more opiates than they were selling goods out, right? So maybe history is repeating itself just in the reverse, right? Maybe China has learned their lesson, or maybe they're getting even. Who knows, right? I'm not saying that I don't necessarily think this. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
And there, you know how the article said, well, only a few private Chinese companies can have the license. Well, if you're a private company in China, once you get big enough, you're not private. There's a board member from the CCP on your company, so it's effectively still controlled by the government.
Yeah, absolutely. What I think is a lot more probable is Thucydides' trap. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, so Thucydides' trap. There's been 12 of 16 times in history, a rising power has gone to war with the established ruling power. Okay, so
12?
there's been 12. So there's been 16 times in history where this has occurred. Only 4 of the 16 times was war, not the outcome, right? Well, so I think China's very aware of this, right? They're the rising power. So they want to avoid going to war with America. Absolutely, right? So, and you already kind of hinted at this. There's all kinds of problems, I think, that are directly associated, that are going on in America that are directly associated with China, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's cultural, I think. I think, this is my opinion, I have no proof of this, but there's a big race problem in America right now, and I think a lot of that stems from China, right? I mean, it's coming from somewhere. Some place is directing it. I mean, there's the COVID problem, right? We know fairly certain that came from China.
Right.
Not intentional, maybe, right?
I don't think intentional.
But is it possible that they are working that to their benefit at this point? I think so.
I think all governments are at this point, if you look around.
Sure.
They're all taking a page from the CCP at this point.
And I mean, there's lots of people thinking that there should be open borders in this country, right? Who benefits from that? I would say China directly, right? For a number of reasons, right? You just take the fentanyl example, right? How much easier would it be to get the drugs in if there are no borders, if they're just open? I mean, there's all kinds of rationale for China to want open borders, right?
Right.
And again, I'm not saying I don't have any proof of this, but it just makes sense. So if you consider from the perspective of Thucydides' trap, right? 12 of 16 times rising powers have gone to war with the ruling power. And is there a benefit to being the ruling power? Oh, absolutely. Right? There's no question when you're the monetary system of the world, the United States makes a great deal. Matter of fact, if it weren't for the fact that the United States is the monetary or the currency of the world, right? If it weren't for that fact, I think the United States would already be well down the list on
Yeah. Well, we might not need China. The Saudi Arabia, some countries in the Middle East just took Russia. I think was behind this. Just took the dollar off of the petrodollar. They made it less relevant, basically, in the last month or so.
Yeah, there is a graph of that, and I wish I would have pulled
That's
it
another
up.
topic, but like the U.S.
Certainly.
losing its prominence.
Certainly. It used to be that all transactions throughout the world were done in the U.S. dollar like 80% of the time,
Yeah.
throughout the world.
Yeah.
Right? It's down to, I think, low 60s now.
But I think the more dangerous thing with China, and we'll get back to fentanyl, is it intentional or not? But who knows is my answer. But there's no incentive for them to stop it. That anybody can see.
Yeah, I don't think it was intentional to begin with, but I think
No.
there's a distinct possibility intentional now.
The bigger problem, and you're starting to see it with more authoritarian governments around the world, is China now serves as a blueprint because they are one of the most successful countries now, like the way their economy has grown, for others to emulate, like others being more authoritarian minded folks in government looking at China and saying, okay, well, they have basically communism, but they have capitalism that's highly controlled, but it's still a free market, but it's really not. I think the dangerous thing is a lot of countries are seeing that and are looking at ways that they can do the same. And I think that's I think that's more dangerous than fentanyl or anything else that's come out of China is the ideology and the fact that they've been successful.
Well, the way I would frame this is, as again, Thucydides' trap. I think they're at all costs trying to avoid going to war. I don't think they want to go to war.
Right.
That's why everybody who's fearful of Taiwan being attacked by China, I think it's definitely a possibility. But I think they're going to have to be certain. China will be certain that the United States is not going to do anything to back their treaty with Taiwan before they attack Taiwan.
Yeah.
And I don't think I think if they were certain, they would already be done. They would already have attacked Taiwan. I think that's the only thing that's stopping them is that it might bring on war with the U.S. and they don't want that. In all likelihood, they would lose, right? Outside of
and it would put a severe delay to their 100-year plan. Maybe
it would end
back
it.
50 years.
It wouldn't delay it. It would end it.
Yeah.
It would end it. If there
Set
was
them
a
back
true
50 years. 50 years.
Oh no! I think it would set them back much more than that because if we're going to go to war with China as the U.S., well, depending on who's in leadership positions with the U.S., but if we were to go to war with the U.S., I'm sure we would remove the Communist Party.
Right.
I would think,
and they're
right?
probably afraid of that. So they're looking at more Navy SEALs tactic to destroy us from within.
Well, exactly. So. And that's how you avoid war, right? You destroy your enemy from within, right?
And that's the true conspiracy because there's no proof of this. You're not going to find it, but you can see the dots, and it's up to you to connect the dots how you how you personally see it.
Well, do you think it's possible that certain politicians of this country are indebted to China?
Yeah, I read the book Stealth War. I highly recommend it. I think I gave it to our PI, Dr. Lester.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I gave it to him. And it talks exactly about this, how China has come in. They've basically not taken over the universities, that's extreme, but they have these what's called Confucius centers where it's on the surface it's all about philosophy and Eastern way of thinking. But like when you look under the hood of what these groups are all about, it's about keeping the Chinese students, there's a lot of Chinese national students in the US, together, like keeping them to where they don't effectively become Americanized. Right. And then maybe recruit a few Americans with them to spread this kind of thinking.
Possibly.
Spread this kind of thinking in the United States. And I mean, that's conspiratorial, but it's actually happening. They're not. However, these Confucius centers are not that prominent as the book made it out to seem. But they are. They do have a presence on just about every university. But so do a lot of other things too.
Okay, so
I always try to be fair, guys. I'm a comrade. Sfera.
Comrade Sfera, I like it. So this is a tangent, right? But I think it does play an important role in what we're discussing. So I don't believe you can trust the media of any sort these days, personally.
Right.
So here's a check your fact, right? One of these fact checking organizations, and
Well, before you go there, how do you define media?
anybody the people go to for information.
So we're a small channel, but we do have viewers that come to us for information. Are we media?
To a certain degree, yes.
Can people trust us?
Well, we're not giving absolutes, right? We're just giving our opinion.
Not
It's
yet.
not news.
Not yet. What's to say if we get powerful and have an actual platform that we don't? And that's what happened with traditional media, is my point.
Well, see, traditional media was in the reverse, though. They went from providing facts
Right.
to providing almost exclusively opinion, but framed as though it's fact.
I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah. So
we're
now it
coming-
seems like it's sponsored by the material they present is just sponsored by special interest groups.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's just one example. A fact check organization is stating, so you can read this, it's been up long enough. Read this email that was sent around. It's to do with did Obama make propaganda legal in the United States, right?
Oh yeah, you were telling me about this.
So they claim fact checked. This is incorrect, right? It's not true, right? So it's false, right? Verdict is false, right? So, but if you notice here, they're citing the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013 and HR Bill 4310, right? That's not even what so this article is citing the wrong thing. It's the Smith-Mundt Act, which is correct, but it's not
Yes.
HR 4310. So, this thing's in my way. So if you go to
HR
HR
4310?
HR 4310 is just about budgeting, right? And they say in the article over here that it mentions nothing about propaganda, right?
Right.
But if you go to the actual item that was legalized, which is HR 5376, which was signed by Obama, it states Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012 amends the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948. So in 1948, Congress passed a law stating it's illegal to allow propaganda in the United States.
Right. So that fact checking website's wrong.
Well, I don't think they're wrong because they're just going off of what that person that released this email is stating. Right? HR 4310, which they got the wrong house number, right?
So what's the bigger implication of this, though?
Well, my implication is they frequently do this, where they take a misnomer or misinformation from something and they exploit that to say this thing's wrong. Which in this case, they're telling the truth. Yeah, HR 4310 or whatever it is says nothing about propaganda, right? So they're actually saying, at least the piece of information that they're using, yes, it is false, right? But they know they're telling a lie, right? Because they're not even focusing on the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which is also mentioned in there. They're not even touching on that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's HR 5736, and it says specifically, if you read what's highlighted in blue, it states that propaganda is now allowed in U.S. media. You're now allowed to lie to the people of the U.S. Any media organization.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, but so are YouTubers, and we didn't need this act to.
Sure, but that's different
us
because
that
you know it's opinion. But that's not my point. My point is that media in and of itself is perpetuating lies, right? Because they're saying no, we never did this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We never said propaganda is allowed in the United States. That's a lie.
Well, I guess that's another conspiracy topic because
it is
the media. So I think here's the way I agree with what you're saying, but here's my take on this. The media is a business, right? Like they're for profit. So they want eyeballs, they want attention, and they want to sell ads and to please their advertisers. So they're showing the people basically what they think they want to see so that they watch more.
Maybe, or maybe it gets back to HR 5736 because the government's paying for this. So I didn't
So you're
bring up
saying the
this article.
government's paying media? That's a
Yep.
different topic altogether. So
Yeah,
the
there's an
media makes
article on
more
this.
from government than
Well,
they do
no,
from
they
advertisers.
do make revenue from the government. The government's paying for messaging.
I see. So they're one of their bigger. The government's one of the biggest
One of their clients.
advertisers.
One of their clients. Yeah.
One of their clients, but they don't happen to run ads.
Correct. They just influence what they peddle. The information that's being peddled.
And the advertisers are okay with this. Why?
Well, the advertisers, all they care about is, are you getting eyeballs, right? I don't care what the information is. Just, are you getting eyeballs?
So the two stakeholders are not in
Opposed.
conflict with each other.
No, they're not opposed. One
All right.
only cares about eyeballs.
So
They
they
don't care
both.
about content.
What you're saying is both business models can agree under your hypothesis.
Absolutely.
What I'm saying can coexist with what you're saying.
Correct.
All
Yep.
right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, and how that comes back to China and fentanyl, it comes back to the question I asked you: is it possible that there's politicians in China's pocket? And I think we both say that's definitely a possibility, right?
That's laughable to even ask.
Exactly. So, do you not think that the government is pulling the strings of media to at least an extent now that
Possibly.
we know they can?
But so
Now
do
that
we
we know
have,
they can.
so do we have our interest in China's pockets too. It just happens to be our interests are not about, I don't think they're about our country, they're about our corporations.
Or just the bottom line, right? It's about dollars. As you're saying.
Corporations. Yeah.
And not just corporations, but the politicians themselves, potentially.
So what China's doing here in the pockets of our politicians, our government or our country through our corporations are also in the pockets of China.
But I think, like you said, I believe for different reasoning, right?
Yes. Yes.
They just want to be able to make more money. So they're
Right.
just doing whatever it takes to make more money.
We
China
in the US, we don't have a 100-year plan.
Right, exactly. That's what
Our
I was just gonna
100-year
say.
plan is to not lose our superstar status, superpower status,
Yep.
and it's not working.
Yeah.
That's not even our 100-year plan. We don't have a 100-year plan. We have 4-year plans with
Yeah.
election cycles.
Yeah. And how do I make money?
Right. So you think China's doing it the right way? Should we abandon capitalism and just move to what they're doing?
No, that's not my argument whatsoever.
But what's
I
the
think
solution?
I think you need liberty and freedom, and that's not why we're doing this. We're not offering solutions. But I mean, just off the top of my head, if I were to provide a solution, I think you need very strict laws in terms of foreign interference, right? And I'd also say that you have to have a way to punish, and I mean severely punish, anybody who's going against
So
what's the best interest of the United States.
to effectively do that, you would have to ban multinational corporations.
I don't know if you have to ban them, but they certainly.
Sure, you do. A company that exists in U.S. and China could care less about who
Certainly.
wins, right? And to control where the money's flowing and keeping it in the system, you would have to not allow Amazon to do business in China, not allow Google to do business in China, and
Right.
vice versa.
Well, the term's escaping me, but that's why there's many arguments against globalization.
Globalization, yeah.
Right. That's the arguments against, right?
Well, the
Because
main argument against it was expose itself during COVID when we're dependent on Chinese infrastructure for our basic needs.
Well, that's a big part of it, but I think it's bigger than that, right? I think it's the fact that you're going to have elite powers, right? Huge corporations determining what's best for you and or what's not best for you, but best for them, and dictating what happens on an individual level, right? I think you lose liberty and freedom. I think everybody in the world loses liberty and freedom, at least
Yeah.
at hazard. And we've both watched this guy Yuri Bezmenov. I'd like to play
Right.
this.
And liberty and freedom is like, look, I'm all for it, but I don't fully agree with Chamath, but I think that those are terms that we strive for. Those are ideals. I don't think it's possible the way capitalism is currently structured in the sense that you only have freedom and liberty if you make enough money. In basically anywhere in the world. You
That's
don't
not true.
truly have, I mean, you're free to go to whatever school you want, eat whatever food you want, but if you can't afford it, how free are you to do that? And if you're
So,
dependent on the government, what you're going to argue is you have the opportunity to get to that point to where you have those
so I
freedoms.
understand your argument, but I don't necessarily agree, right? So money is definitely a dictator in terms of what you're capable of accomplishing. But certainly you're limited to less income you have or less money you have, right? But you're still able to make individual determination on what you're going to do, right? For example, if I want to, I don't know, take an injection or not, I should be able to determine this for myself, right? And we kind of all know what I'm talking about here, I think. But there's
Don't get
there's
us
others
deplatformed.
dictating that's not the case. We will determine for you,
Right.
right? It doesn't take a whole lot of money to make that determination as an individual. You can be a homeless person on the streets, and you should be able to make that determination for yourself. Granted, where I'm going to travel for vacation does dictate how much money I have in my pocket, is dictated by how much money I have in my pocket. Certainly. If I'm a homeless person on the streets, I'm probably not taking vacationing to Paris, right? Which
What
is,
if you're a government worker where now it's mandated, and I'm not anti-vax. If you are a government worker or contractor, you're mandated to get vaccinated as well as most big corporations. So the fact that your freedom, let's say you don't want the vaccine, but you need the money. What are you going to do? Quit your job?
well,
How free
so,
is that? That's what I'm trying to say. So
right.
it's not going to Paris, it's not luxuries.
No,
It's
I agree,
basically
and I'm arguing that point as well. I don't think the individual should be dictated to what they can decide for themselves.
right, but you and I would both agree that if that person made enough money to not need to work, they could then have more freedom.
And I understand, right? But what you're saying is it's levied in a different way, right? Where pressures are put on your source of income or your source of food,
Right,
essentially, right?
right.
What I'm saying is that should not be allowed, right? That liberty and freedom does not dictate what you can and cannot do.
Right. Well, that's one example. How about if you want to go to public school, but you live in a bad area? How free are you to decide how good a quality education your kids are getting?
Well, there's certain individuals that don't allow school choice. There's others that want that to be the case, right?
Right.
Yes, there are all kinds of individuals limiting liberty as we speak, right? But I would agree. I think you should be allowed to choose where you go to school as an
But
individual.
then everybody would choose the good schools, right? And then you
Sure.
can't sustain that.
Well, you create more. What would happen is it might take a little while to correct itself, but eventually, what would happen is these schools that are having no attendees would fire the teachers that are making the schools horrible to begin with.
Not in California with the teachers union.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are the people that don't want this to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we went off on a tangent from fentanyl, but
Well,
that's
we're
the
still kind of
conspiracy.
on it. What I think the way that it circles back, to quote,
Oh yeah, you wanted to play this video, right?
Jim Saki.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, the purpose of the video is just to demonstrate that this has been in the works for some time in the United States. So here's a defector from the USSR, right? He was a KGB defector,
Right.
and he's describing what Russia's at the time was currently doing to bring down the United States, right? Again, a country divided cannot be sustained, right?
So you're saying China's
Has just picked up
implementing similar
yeah, absolutely
tactics.
picked up where USSR left off.
Yeah. Okay. Can't hear. Can't hear.
Oh, I got to share my audio.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Stop share.
What, share screen? Oh yeah, share sound. There we go.
Let the yen stack up. Or
Let's
yawn.
back that up
Yawn.
a little bit. There we go. You should be able to hear it now. Tell me if you can.
Riveting.
About ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or
Sorry, just thought real quick. So at the time, USSR was trying to avoid Thucydides' trap as well, right? Destroy America from within.
Yeah, but they
Right.
didn't succeed.
So this is in 1984, right?
Right.
No, they didn't succeed. But there's nothing to say that China won't.
Right. But nothing to say they will either.
often
True.
measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your...
So there's a number of things just right there, right?
2 million
Educated-
views with 74,000 likes and 1.5 thousand dislikes. Tough crowd.
So yeah, so he states that you have to educate the next generation, right? So
Right. Right.
at this point, who controls the educational system in the United States, right?
Sure. But you
it's,
can argue this is the same. It's good times create lazy
Right.
people. Lazy
No.
people create bad times. Bad times create hardworking people.
weak.
Hardworking
It's not
people.
lazy, it's weak.
Sure, whatever. It's that cycle. It doesn't have to be Russia.
No, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that. But if here's a KGB agent stating this is what USSR is doing, right?
To America,
Yep.
yeah.
Right. And I mean no offense to anybody out there, but is it possible that at the time this was implemented in 1984, that there were too many people, as he's saying, you need the generations to change their viewpoint, right? So were there too many generations, or was the current generation, were they taught too well to believe in America and in the greatness of America, say, right?
Yeah.
Were they propagandized, right? Saying the Pledge of Allegiance and all of that, right? Which they still do in school.
Hmm.
What would they do to change that? And is it possible? I mean, and actually, you're a good person to ask this to. Okay. Right now, I believe there's a third of the country's inhabitants are foreign born.
Myself
think that-
included.
Right. So this is why you're a good person to ask. Do you think it's a possibility that was implemented for a reason? To have a third? It's never been like that in the United States. There's never been that many people foreign born. So are they cemented in the culture and the belief system of the United States? I would say probably not. A third of them are not, right?
So I would
So-
say some are and some aren't.
Right. So do you think that's one way? So you say USSR didn't succeed. Do you think maybe China could have a hand in pushing something like this?
Yeah, but so what if you get more foreign born, that means children of immigrants. Those are generally the ones who it all boils down to parenting. I mean, their immigrant mentality is such that you're very efficient with the resources you have. And I
Mhm.
think some of that gets passed down to your kids. So I don't necessarily see that as like a tactic, but it
Well,
sure to answer your question, it's a possibility.
well, I would add to that the fact that no longer is assimilation being pushed in the United States, right? Matter of
Right.
fact, the reverse of that's being pushed. Keep your culture,
Right.
keep everything that you learned from wherever you came, and that's fine. Keep it all,
Yeah.
right? Don't become an American.
Right.
I think that's for me personally. I think that's for a purpose.
Sure, but you can't prove that.
No, I can't prove that, but it just seems to make sense, right? Why would you stop pushing? You know, if
I
you want
don't
to be an
think that
American, be an
I don't
American.
think that's for I don't think that's for a purpose. I think it would be easier to destroy us from within with other tactics than
Well, I
having
think that
more
would play.
immigrants come.
I think that
Because
would play a significant role.
if you look at the immigrants that came in the 80s, a lot of them were high skilled immigrants that came.
Right.
They work and still do in the computer industry,
Completely agree.
mathematics, engineering,
Mhm.
medicine. So I think if you look at that versus the assimilation, I think it's still a net positive because it's helping our GDP.
Well, it depends, right? That might be true, but is it a net positive that causes potentially? And I'm not saying this is the case, but I could, and I don't think you could find any data on this to support it, but I could envision in which that is the goal, right? In which what you do is you remove many people that are familiar with the culture of the United States and you implement all these different cultures who have no kinship to the United States and its culture, have no idea what the culture even is, or the
Yeah,
Constitution or
yeah.
the founding. Now you've
Well,
erased history. Now you can implement whatever it is you feel you would like to.
I mean that's one way to look at it. That you and I disagree on this. I think that the internet and technology has made the world smaller and flatter. There's actually a book called The World is Flat. So
Mhm.
I, living here in Yuma, Arizona, ignore my Chinese communist background. I'm not in China. I living
Do
in
you
Yuma,
want to be in China?
Arizona. No, I living in Yuma, Arizona, have way more in common with somebody who does clinical research, let's say in Europe or India, than I do with my own neighbors next door. That has nothing to do with culture. That has to do
So,
with the hyper defragmentation and the ability to form different social circles based on no longer proximity or culture, but interest that you share. And that's on a global scale. And I don't think that's going away.
so I understand your argument. It's a good argument. I would
I know
disagree
it's a
that
fantastic argument.
you don't have more in common with somebody who you don't speak the language with, that you share no cultural
They
background
speak
with.
English. Anyone in clinical research anywhere in the world just about speaks English.
Okay, even if they speak English, you still don't share many of the cultural backgrounds. Yes, you share career, right? But that could be said of, and I mean, to a degree, it's true. Whoever you work with, you're going to have more in common with.
Right.
But you
Yeah.
wouldn't marry some gal that you work with just because you work with her, right?
If I wanted
Not
to.
necessarily, but not necessarily. What I'm saying is that does not dictate that you have more in common with them. It's just that you do share a commonality.
Well, when we're hyper specialized, culture becomes more of what you do than where you are, is my whole point. And technology catalyzes that.
I think China would disagree with you.
China's playing a different game. They're not wanting to do this. Let's all network. They don't let their citizens network with others. They don't
I
let them on
understand.
Twitter. They don't
I
let them on
understand.
Facebook. They have their own. That's because they're trying to push the CCP agenda. Free countries let their citizens network with anybody they want across the globe. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, maybe we've exposed there's a potential problem there, right? And I'm
Sure,
not
there's a
saying that
potential problem to everything.
I'm not saying that free people shouldn't be allowed to do what they want, but maybe they shouldn't be associating with communists. And there's actually
Yeah,
a law against that. I can't remember the year that it was passed in the United States, but
right.
it's illegal to be a communist.
Right, but how many people do you know associating with communists? It's like less than a 0.1% of social media use.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
Come on.
I don't think they knowingly think of themselves as communists, but you look at any thread on Twitter just about they're communists.
Sure. What I'm talking about is I have more in common culturally with people in my industry, or like crypto community is a perfect example. It's better than clinical research. People interested in Bitcoin, Ether, Cardano, Doge, all these cryptocurrencies.
Sure.
They don't give a fuck where the people they're talking to are located. All they care about is this person is in my tribe. They understand HODL for life. They understand programming. They understand DeFi. They don't care that you're in America and that your culture is different. That they don't give a shit.
I understand.
And that's the new generation. And same with kids playing
everything
video
you're
games.
saying. I still don't think it's correct, though. You don't hold somebody in America who knows nothing about crypto has more in common if they're both Americanized, for lack of a better term. They have more in common with somebody in the USSR who speaks English, and all they have in common with this person is crypto.
Disagree, because if you're in hardcore,
completely disagree.
Yeah, look, if you're hardcore in your craft, that is your culture. You don't care where. There's no borders.
Okay.
And the technology is catalyzing this. Whether that's a good or bad thing is a different conversation.
Sure. I don't agree, again, because you have different teachings, right?
Right. But there's nothing to agree. This is actually happening. It's not, whether it's good or bad is what you're saying you disagree.
No. I disagree that there's more in common with somebody who has one segment of their life in which they have agreement on you with, opposed to two people that have been raised the same way for however many years that they're now corresponding with one another, right? Your neighbor, right? You're both raised essentially the same way.
Yeah, my neighbors, one of them I do have more in common with, but like most of them, I have nothing in common with them, right? Other than we live on the same street.
And if you don't think you have something in common with your neighbor in America, that's even further proof that there's something really drastically wrong in America.
Maybe, but that's a different topic.
Sure. The problem is that everybody's being divided.
Right,
but you should absolutely have more in common with somebody in America than somebody in the USSR.
But okay, I agree. But what is causing that division is where the conspiracy comes in. Is it China? Is it USSR, like this guy's saying, or is it just organically what happens when technology fosters communication and collaboration across borders? I think it's the latter.
See, I think it's both. I think it's a combination.
Maybe it could live in both. Maybe.
Because I think you could use the same argument with USSR and consider it as trap.
But I don't think technology was created for that purpose, to get rid of culture in the US. I think technology don't give a fuck. Technology is gonna do what it's gotta do, regardless.
So I don't think they're trying to get rid of culture necessarily. They're trying to be divisive and have numerous cultures coexist, right?
Right. Okay. Sure. So I don't think technology is created for that purpose.
Even the wonderful president, I think they're called president in Germany, Merkel.
Chancellor?
Yeah, Chancellor, there you go. She even said, because she said, I want to bring in 2 million people. They did. I think it was 2 million, maybe it was 1 million. Right. And then a couple of years later, she said this was the worst decision I ever made. This does not work.
Yeah, but those are globalists. I'm talking about regular people, not globalists.
No, but she was saying quite the opposite. She's not a globalist. She was saying it was a huge mistake to bring in people who had nothing in common with the German culture and place them here and think this was a wonderful idea. It's not. They have to want to be German to live here.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen when we all discover we're in the Matrix and this is VR and there is no?
This is our first episode, so you got to go back to that.
Exactly. I'm trying to end this one. I get what you're saying. It's just I don't think that there's any nefarious plot when it comes to people collaborating on a global scale.
I would agree with that. Sure, I completely agree with that. What I'm saying, though, is I think there's definite possibility, and I can't say one way or another for certain, because nobody knows for certain. Well, some might. Whether or not China's intentionally doing things to undermine the United States. Well, my personal opinion, I think they are.
Yeah, my personal opinion, I think they are too. So we agree.
I guess,
We took a circuitous route to agree.
Right. So, and I think you can argue many different forms in which China is trying to accomplish this.
Well, you just valued like national sovereignty, and not to say that I don't, but I think it's less important than you're saying it is, and that's our fundamental disagreement, me and you.
Well, I think you need cultural cohesion for a society to fundamentally strive.
I agree. Exist. You can't have chaos like we had last year with riots every night.
It's still going on this year.
Sure, okay. That's another conspiracy. That's another conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy. The media is just
another episode.
But the media is paying less attention to it.
Sure. But you can't, it's not as bad as last year.
No, it's worse.
All right, definitely another episode. Maybe that's
They're
next
starting
week.
to shoot at one another.
They weren't doing that last year?
No. They were just throwing Molotov cocktails at buildings.
They were doing that every year. Anyways, this is going on too long, guys. That's going to be for next week's topic. Let us know what you think, right? In the thoughts. Are you Team USA, put an American flag? Are you Team China, put a Chinese flag? Or put a flag.
There's few of those.
Let's
in
put
the US.
Let's put what flag you like to represent. And just put whatever you feel like.
Our Chinese flag in China is great, awesome.
Are you Team Dan, Comrade Dan, or are you Team Chris? Although we don't really disagree on too much, just a couple things at the end, fundamental wise.
Well, I'm not even saying at the end what we disagreed on. I'm not saying that's what's going on. I'm saying it's a possibility.
Yeah, you're saying it's a possibility. Well, you're threatened by it. You're threatened.
Well, what I see it as a possibility.
Right. But we can't. If we go by everything possibility, we're not going to live good lives.
I think what needs to be done to assure that your community is sound, and the community in this case is the entire country. I think you investigate things that could be of concern.
Sure. Yeah.
And you figure it out, right? Like China does. Do you think they just willy-nilly jump into things? No, like the All In podcast they were saying. No, they got the data to back it up.
Of course they do. They're a machine.
We need more of that.
CCP is a machine. So what you're saying is U.S. should be more CCP style.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Thank you for perverting what I just said. What I'm saying is they need to have a little better idea on what's good for a country and what's not, and do a little investigation, a little research, maybe have a good understanding.
Yeah, I think we're way too deep in the rabbit hole of corporate interests to...
Oh, yeah. No, that's a big problem.
We don't have a 100-year plan. I think that's the biggest problem of the United States. The argument now is, do we need one?
Well, I think so long as you're in charge, you don't need a 100-year plan, right?
Exactly.
You just have to continue doing what makes you great. I think when you're down the totem pole somewhere, then you need a plan, right? If you want to become a superpower or the superpower.
Oh, okay, yeah. This could go on forever, but we will do more. Let us know what topics you want down there, right underneath this missile. Let us know what topics you would like, and if we're not deplatformed by next week, we'll do it again.
There's that possibility, isn't there?
Yes. Signing off, Comrade Sauber.
Thank you for listening for 2 hours or however long this was.
Jeez. Sounds fun. You guys are troopers. Talk to you later. Like, subscribe, comment, share.
If you made it to the end, let us know you deserve a prize.
Yes, Chris will send you
something. I'll send you our book.
Copy of the United States Constitution, so you can learn it. He's going to beat you over the head with it.
I'll send you a copy of our book, the book Dan and I wrote. Wow.
On my channel, people would love that. On this one, not so much.
Yeah, they might.
All right. Send them that. Bye-bye. Great prize.